Yeah, sure. What? This way, if it works out, I'm going to take the credit. If it doesn't work out, I'm blaming JD. You better be careful, JD. He's going to turn his plane around and get the hell out of here. Yeah, I like that idea. I think it's a good idea. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. This way, if it works out, I'm going to take the credit. If it doesn't work out, I'm blaming JD. You better be careful, JD. He's going to turn his plane around and get the hell out of here. Yeah, I like that idea. I think.
With that said, this MOU appears to be, just from the text, a disaster that does not achieve any of the actual signal goals that were set by the administration at the beginning. There were effectively 5 goals that were set by the administration at the beginning. One was ending the nuclear program, not just nuclear weapons, no nuclear enrichment, zero enrichment. That is not in the deal. Ballistic missiles ended. That is not in the deal. And the president today suggested that ballistic missiles should actually continue to be held by the Iranians because the Saudis, our allies, also hold ballistic missiles. Then you have the support of terrorism. That is not part of the deal. Anything that looks like an attempt to end terrorism. A permanent opening of the Strait of Hormuz toll-free. Not only is that not in the deal appears to have a provision allowing Iran and Oman to attempt to toll the straits after 60 days. And then finally, the idea that Iran would receive some sort of sanctions relief after all of those things happen. We are already seeing from day one relief in their ability to ship oil out of Iran. In my opinion, the Vice President of the United States, the chief negotiator on this particular project, has not well served the president.
Here's the president talking about what he sees as an overly aggressive posture from Israel in Lebanon in the recent part of this war. Watch this.
In all fairness to Bibi Netanyahu, who happens to be a good man, gets a little excited sometimes. We have a little dispute over Lebanon. I say, you can do a little softer touch, Bibi. You don't have to knock down a building every time somebody walks into it that's from Hezbollah. But it's been an amazing partnership. But he will say, we're the big partner and he's the very small partner, and that's true.
Your thoughts on that, Ben?
The fact is that the president himself has suggested that Israel has a right to defend itself. Ambassador Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, has said that Israel has a right to defend itself. Hezbollah is a terrorist group. It is not the government of Lebanon, and in fact is opposed to the government of Lebanon. And they've been firing ordnance over the border at Israel for literally years at this point. The idea that Israel should be held back from defending itself against a terror group that is a proxy army of Iran because we have some sort of deal over the Strait of Hormuz is a massive tactical blunder that gives Iran one of the things that Iran actually wants, which is to reconstitute its forward operating base in Lebanon. And anything that allows them to reconstitute their terror army would be a huge regional mistake.
All right. Ben Shapiro, thank you very much for weighing in today and joining us. Always good to have you with us. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks so much.
And you lost the only president you had full control over. Trump went from being a slave to Israel to comparing Benjamin Netanyahu disfavorably to Al-Qaeda. Man, what a ride. So we could pick 1,000 different responses and enjoy every one of them. But in the interest of restraint and decency, we're only going to play one. And it's from Ben Shapiro. Here's Ben Shapiro.
So Trump, while characterizing the Iranians as very reasonable, says that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is a very difficult guy. Okay, I'm just going to be clear. One of these countries has been flying sorties next to the United States and putting the lives of its own soldiers at risk next to the United States. One of these countries has been trying to kill American soldiers. So probably we should, be a little bit more measured in our critiques of our allies. The one thing I will say with regard to the president and the vice president and the signals they are sending, if you keep sending the signal to a terror-backing regime that chants death to America, that you want to deal with them so badly that you're going to tell our allies in the region to stand down, you are giving them an enormous amount of forward momentum. And that is a huge mistake that should not be done. And I hope that the president does not do that. Again, that signing ceremony in Switzerland should be canceled. It should not happen.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, well, I mean, there's so many things to say, but we'll just keep this limited just because it's just too easy. But you'll notice big picture that there is no distress at the truly harmful effect to the United States of this war, to the American economy, to our ability to project legitimate power, assuming there are times when you do need to project legitimate power around the world, in the Middle East specifically. Here's the response from a Fox News contributor to the deal. Watch.
This deal and everything that we know about it, to the degree that it is being spun in public by this, and behind the scenes by the administration, Everything about this deal seems bad to me. It all seems bad. It all seems like a setback. It doesn't seem like it meets any of the measures that the president actually put out there of his goals when it came to this conflict. And look, at some point, this Republican Party needs to decide which kind of foreign policy it's going to have. Is it going to be an America First foreign policy, one that is bold, that uses American power in key moments decisively in order to affect what it wants to achieve? Or are we going to just backslide into being some kind of hillbilly Obama kind of GOP? That is not something that is acceptable to me. It should not be acceptable to Republicans, and it should not be acceptable to any conservative who is interested in the success of America going forward.
It's amazing to see that if you're one of the overwhelming majority of Americans who no longer pays for a cable package and you're sort of wondering, why are leaders doing these things? Because they're watching stuff like that and they take it seriously. So you put someone on television who has no knowledge whatsoever of the region, hasn't been there, doesn't understand it, is taking almost all of his understanding of it from Fox News. You have the snake eating its tail. It's a guy who's believing the lies that he's ingesting and then coming to absurd conclusions on the basis of them. So it's like someone who has no authority to weigh in on this is telling you his august view of it. So there's that. It's childish. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's turn to be disappointed. Here's Donald Trump today at the G7 in Europe describing Israel's behavior.
And you'll see that when you see the agreement, but it's appropriate that we release the agreement. And we did send a copy to Israel, by the way. They've been a good partner. Again, I think they could do better with respect to Hezbollah. I'm not saying they shouldn't protect themselves. I'm saying when 2 drones are shot into the desert and drop harmlessly, you don't have to knock down buildings in Beirut. They could behave better. And frankly, they could do a better job. I love them as a partner. They were terrific, but they could do a much better job with Hezbollah.
Wow. Consider that for a moment. And he said a lot of things like that in the last 24 hours. But just in that statement, he's by the way, we sent Israel a copy of the agreement. Oh, you sent them a copy, did you? You BCC'd them? Didn't consult Israel. They're a participant. They're our partner in this war. This is a joint war we are waging with the government of Israel somehow. First time in American history that's ever happened. Not a good idea, by the way. Note to self, don't do that again.
I can't even imagine having passed away and watching my worst enemies be given my legacy by my own wife, yielding the stage to Ben Shapiro. Like we were going to allow that. We're not going to allow it. I said from the very beginning of this entire thing, I want war with all of you, and I'm so glad that I'm getting it. Tucker has been trending all weekend for saying the quiet part out loud regarding Charlie Kirk's death. He was on the Can't Be Censored podcast, and here's what he had to say.
Well, you're never going to hear me whine about threats ever to me because I got on this voluntarily. I know I got fired after 15 years, the highest rated show in American cable television. So, and I got fired for my opinion. So and I'm not whining at all. I'm so grateful that I got fired. I'm just saying it's not like I didn't know what the price is. I do know what the price is. Charlie Kirk was murdered.
Yeah.
And he was not murdered for his opinions on transgenderism, obviously. He was, I believe, and most people who knew him well as I did and was friends with him as I was, believe he was most likely murdered for his evolving views on Israel.
Don't believe your own eyes. Nope, we're going to believe our own eyes this time. We're going to believe our own eyes this time, if that's cool. And that ain't a grieving widow. Anyway, Blakey Neff responded. I want you to know why it's important that he responded to the Tucker thing, because he used to work for Tucker Carlson. And I want to say, Tucker, if you're watching, I told you so. Tucker was so nice about Blake Neff. So nice. So nice about Erica. So nice about Blake Neff. Said, I know these people, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Blakey Neff, you could see how quickly he would have stabbed Charlie in the back as he just stabs Tucker right into the back. And he tweeted this. Actually, those of us who knew Charlie best, a group that doesn't include Tucker, do think that Tyler Robinson did it and was motivated by transgender radicalism. Tucker is lying. No, Blake Neff, you're lying. And some audio is going to show that the majority of people at Turning Point USA don't believe Tyler Robinson did it or acted alone. We'll have that later this week. I know some other podcasters are working on that, namely Baron Coleman. But you're lying. And the fact that you do it to cover up and you stab Tucker in the back, or I guess in the front in this circumstance, lets us know what you would do to Charlie Kirk. You weren't one of his best friends.
Really want people to understand, Tucker, you and Charlie had such a unique and special bond and relationship. It was a deep friendship, and you both had each other's back in an incredible way.
He had my back.
You had his back too.
Holy
I know
smokes.
those stories as well.
Yeah, and I promised I wouldn't get into any of that, but I will say, and I'm not going to, but I will say, because I want this to be about
I'm gonna come out of this
Jesus
as rap
and
on time.
his love for Jesus
When we,
and what he did to spread the word of Jesus throughout the world. But I will just say this, that whenever I would come and do a gig for you guys, which was a lot because I really enjoyed it, and he was so kind to invite me and defend my being there, but I would always, he's the only person I did this with, I would always say, hey, you know, let's like meet in my hotel room or have a meal. Like, I loved talking to him. And it wasn't just to catch up on everything that's going on in the political world. He would always bring it back to God every single time. And it was so, there's no one around. Like, so he didn't need to be like, oh yeah, I really love God. It was like, just us. And he'd be talking about that.
And you would come to Phoenix and you would reach out to, it was like, I have so many memories of Charlie being like, I gotta do dinner. Who are you doing dinner with? Oh, Tucker's in town. I gotta meet up with him.
Always.
Blake Neff is a liar. He is a coward. He is a backstabber, and he is made of the stuff that you would expect from a person who would betray Charlie. You proved yourself to be a deceitful traitor by pretending he was not close to Tucker Carlson. Everybody knows, but he was close to Tucker Carlson. He confided with him.
I would not support the Republican Party. There's no chance I would support the Republican Party. I'm not going to support the Democratic Party. I don't know what I'm going to do. But at this point, you know, how could I or any American voter support a political party that's not loyal to the United States?
To the men and women in Washington, D.C. with an R after your name, stay with me because this concerns you, but this part's for them. I told you this would happen for years. I have said this. I said the day would come when your own people would stop defending you, when their loyalty would run out, when the other side is worse, doesn't work anymore. You all rolled your eyes. I mean, I had Orrin Hatch say, I'll just do a flag burning amendment and that'll bring them all back. Oh my God. Nope. Now it's real. It's here. Your inaction, or worse, your unwillingness to understand that the days of Paul Ryan are over. Don't rush to defend the GOP. Don't do it. Not because you owe them, or the other side anything. You don't. But because every time you defend them for free, they teach you that betrayal is survivable.
Trump saw that, and he's again not stupid, and he saw this. He's like, ooh, and he knew right away that this was a massive mistake, and that we were really exposed. We could get hurt doing this, and there was no obvious military solution. I mean, he knew that, and so he tried to posture his way out of it. We're going to eliminate you, and after like the 400th Truth Social, they reached the same conclusion that everyone on the globe reached, which is this guy's not strong, he's weak. Strong people don't brag about how strong they are. They just punch you in the face and end the conversation. And I think everyone knows that intuitively. And Trump is very much, what'd you say? Shut up, bitch.
Just 2 days ago, I spent over an hour on The View. So I actually have great experience in very hostile negotiations, and I've used that. I mean, look, Joy Behar is way tougher than the Iranians, and she and I are best friends now. So we're going to get to a good place here. We're going to get to a good place. We're already at a good place. It's just a question of whether we can really get the icing on the top of fundamentally transforming Iran's relationship with the world.
For 29 seasons, this show has invited thousands of guests with all kinds of diverse points of view. And we have been asking our next guest to join us for a while now. So we're glad that he's taken us up on the offer today. Please welcome author of the new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. surprised
at how tall you are. He's very tall.
If you only see somebody on TV, you just see their, in my case, giant head. So
We all
it hides how
have
tall I am.
giant
That's
heads,
right.
We are the table of big heads here.
So this is a
Alyssa,
show of MAGA Republicans, right? That's
Yeah,
what my
right,
media
yes.
team told me? Okay, good.
well, we'll find out. I think you have the first question, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talk to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately, we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote. But the president knows that a lot of Americans are struggling. In fact, he ran on that. He talked about it, and we've done some things and made some good progress on that point.
He just said he loves the inflation.
I love the inflation.
I hope today's numbers will be a wake-up call because those prices are too high. We need some relief, and Congress can deliver some relief, and if Congress doesn't deliver the relief, I think voters are not going to be pleased.
What he said, Anna, what he said is that he loves the fact that the inflation is going to come down when this war is over. That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That wasn't a direct.
That's not what he
Are
said,
you
but
his
that's
interpreter or are you his vice president? Come on.
Well, look. What the president said. People were asking about the inflation. They were asking about the affordability problem, which again is very real. And what he said is, "I love the inflation because it's going to come down when the war is over."
Sonny.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, according to a new report from the New York Times, you were the leading voice behind the scenes to release the Epstein files, and we applaud you for that. And you warned top officials, including top DOJ officials, at strategy meetings taking place inside the Situation Room. We understand that there are tapes of those meetings, that this was a huge problem for the base. The report says you even floated having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to clear the president's name, but you were rebuffed by your people. Why?
So, number one, I am frankly kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff, and that story says that that's one of the things that's true is that some people called me a conspiracy theory on the Epstein
Susie
stuff.
Wiles called you a conspiracy
and I love
theorist.
Susie, but absolutely, she thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist on the Epstein stuff because I think that it's crazy that you had this guy who is clearly a sex predator who is hanging out with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Like, that really bothered me. I don't know what's there, of course. Nobody knows exactly what happened unless you were there, but that really bothered me, and I wanted to have full transparency. What I disagree with is the idea that the White House wasn't committed to full transparency. We have to remember, I was inside the room when some of these decisions were made. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, the one that the president signed, the one that led to all these files that we're seeing, the emails. By the way, again, sorry, Joe, I do have to defend my boss. I know you guys don't always appreciate this, but, one of the things you see in the Epstein emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump literally reported Jeffrey Epstein to the police.
Okay,
that's one of the things that came out of these
files. They were
files.
best friends for about a decade. And remember, he signed that Transparency Act under duress when some Republican women, congresswomen like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, did not give in to his pressure of not signing. He brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her into caving on not voting for that bill.
So let me respond to that. So
that's all true.
Let me respond to that. So number one is, yes, Donald Trump, and he said this, he knew Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. He also threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club when he found out he was a creep and reported him to the police. That's something that the media often misses when it reports this story. They tell the fact that they knew each other in the 80s, which the president himself admits. They ignore the fact that he narked on him to the police and led ultimately to JeffreyEpstein's downfall. To that point, Anna, you know the Republican Party. Well, it's one of the things that led to law enforcement investigation. But on the point that you made,
it was allegedly over a real estate deal that they got into a fight over.
But the email says
And they
actually
didn't just know each other. Let's just be truthful and transparent here. They didn't just know each other.
He's in a lot of
They were
pictures.
incredibly close friends.
he reported him to the police. That's what I'm saying. That is objective. That is objectively true. But Anna made another point that I think Whoopi, if I may, because Anna made a very important point. This question about did Donald Trump release these files only under duress from Republicans? And Anna, you know the Republican Party probably better than I do. The idea that Donald Trump runs around afraid of Republican congressmen as opposed to the other way around is kind of crazy.
What was the bipartisan? It was Republicans and Democrats.
But because the Republicans control the House and the Senate, particularly the Senate, you need the Republican sign-off. What the president did is, look, I will say this. Again, I was in there in the meetings. He was very frustrated that the Democrats were making this about him when he's like, look, I threw the guy out of my club. I am the guy who reported him to the police, or one of the people who reported him to the police. The president was frustrated about that, absolutely. But he eventually came to say, you know what? Let's just get everything out there. Let's have this out in the public. And he actually called the senators. I was there. He called the senators and said, you know what? Pass this bill, I'll sign it. And
well, in the book, Mr. Vice President, you make a mea culpa of sorts for calling Democrats childless cat ladies.
Oh, man.
Okay?
I must boneheaded comment.
You say that in the book, that it was boneheaded, which it was.
Thank you.
What were you thinking when you said that?
So Joy said when we were off air that I'm fine, which I think is about the best endorsement that I'm going to get out of Joy Behar for a Republican. Thank you. I appreciate that. Graded on a curve here at The View. But, you know, I guess one of the things that I try to do, and I'm always, you know, all of us are always learning. You know, you said you were a lapsed Catholic. I'm a bad Catholic. I think all of us, that's why we need grace as Christians, is because we recognize that there are certain things we got to work on.
Right.
But here's what I'd say about that. So did that comment actually shed light on something and start a discussion, or did it just close people down? And when I make a comment that just closes people down, instead of trying to appreciate the point that I make, that's a mistake, right? And that's on me to do better.
Okay,
because can I just say, the point that
on.
I'd say on that, Joy, is I do think, in a very subtle sometimes in a more profound way, I think our country has become more anti-family and more anti-child. It's harder to travel. It's harder to go to a restaurant.
Mr. Vice President, you know your grandchild is, or your child is arriving.
No grandbabies yet.
Not yet. We're very excited for you and Usha, and we wanted to give you a
Thank
view
you.
once.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for your
We
time.
will put this on. We'll send you guys a
Vance,
photo.
His new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, is available now. Scan the QR code on your screen to purchase a copy.
Let's actually have a foreign policy where we focus on the interests of American citizens. Let's have an economic policy that's about building in the United States of America rather than shipping all of our jobs overseas and getting Wall Street enriched in the process. Let's have an economic policy that's about more self-sufficiency. I mean, I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I don't want to wake up in a country where I take my kid to the doctor and they can't get antibiotics, because the antibiotics that were invented in the United States of America are manufactured in some foreign country. That is the legacy of the Republican Party that came before Donald J. Trump. We're not going back to it. The Republican coalition in the 1990s was more upscale. They showed up in midterms. So Republicans tended to do a little bit better in midterm elections in the 1990s than, say, Republicans do today. And that's because while these working class voters are great, there are also people who don't necessarily show up to vote in the midterms all the time. We've got to motivate them. We've got to get them out to vote. I think it's one of the lessons that we learned in Virginia and New Jersey is that when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, you've got to give people something to actually believe in, something to be inspired by to get out there and vote. They're not going to vote just because you have an R next to your name. You've got to speak to this new working class coalition. And the one worry that I have when I look at so many of our great congressional allies, I do think that some of our folks in Congress, they want to go back to the Republican Party of 20 years ago. That Republican Party was a Republican Party that lost and that couldn't successfully govern the country.
One more call we're able to make, this in Rhode Island, where Link Chafee, the incumbent Republican, has lost, we project, to the Democratic candidate Sheldon Whitehouse, 2 men whose views are virtually indistinguishable, but nonetheless, in a state like Rhode Island, in a year like this, with an R next to your name, you're endangered, and so Chafee proved to be endangered. We're going to take a brief break. We're going to take a look at how this alters the structure in terms of who's up, who's down in the House and in the Senate when we come back. Stay tuned. The House has gone Democratic, but the Senate is still out there. It's at the bottom of the screen. Here we go. This is Ben Nelson. This is a Democrat hold in Nebraska, which is no surprise, no switch. Now, North Dakota U.S. Senate, this is Kent Conrad. He's been a senior member on the Budget Committee and well known to those who cover Washington. He was not thought to be in any trouble, and he wins re-election. New Mexico, Jeff Bingaman, been around a long time, was overwhelmingly favored to win. He has won.
South Dakota. And this is an interesting race. Tim Johnson has won re-election to a third term. Why is it interesting? You may remember in December of 2006, just after the Democrats took control of the Senate, Tim Johnson suffered a near-fatal brain hemorrhage. He was in the hospital for weeks. It took him 9 months to return to the Senate. He still generally operates out of a wheelchair, although out of pride, he walks in on crutches into the Senate. When he goes there, there was some question in the state of South Dakota whether or not he was up to another 6-year term. The voters of South Dakota said absolutely, and Tim Johnson, according to Fox News, wins his third term. In the state of New Mexico, and this is one of the big ones, Tom Udall, the congressman, beats Congressman Steve Pierce, according to Fox News. The reason this is a big one, this is a Republican seat. It's an open seat. Pete Domenici, the long-term Republican senator from the state of New Mexico, has retired. And in that open seat, Tom Udall has turned a long-time Republican seat to the Democrats. That's another pickup for the Democrats in the state of New Mexico. In the state of Montana, Max Baucus, the incumbent, seeking a 6th term, and he wins it. He's an important man on Capitol Hill, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. He was running against a fellow named Bob Kelleher, who had run at least 16 times as a Democrat, a Republican, and a Green Party member over the years. He didn't win as this time. In Iowa, the incumbent, Tom Harkin, liberal Democrat, seeking a 5th term. He beats Christopher Reed in his first run for public office. Let me just quickly say one thing here. This race got a little nasty. In the last debate, Reed accused Harkin of being the Tokyo Rose of al-Qaeda and Middle East terrorism, providing aid and comfort to the enemy by calling for a withdrawal of troops from Iraq. The voters of Iowa were not persuaded, and they have re-elected Mr. Harkin. And
you say you think there's time for a house cleaning. Obviously, the Democrats have taken care of some of that. They've cleaned out some from further Republican members, obviously. But does this mean that there should be new leadership, in your view, in the House of Representatives in terms of your floor leader, your whip, and so on down the line?
I don't want to get into personality issues about our leadership. What I want to do is get into ideas. We can't be afraid of our principles anymore. We can't be afraid of taking political risks anymore. We can't be afraid of taking on big ideas and going straight to the American people with them. We've had too much political fear in our party, too many earmarks, no reform. That has to end. We've seen what that got us. Now is time for us to clean up our acts as our party and go forward. I won't get into the personalities of who should lead this, only that we have to go back to being that reform party that we used to be.
All right.
You've got to give people something to actually believe in, something to be inspired by to get out there and vote. They're not going to vote just because you have an R next to your name. You've got to speak to this new working class coalition. And the one worry that I have when I look at so many of our great congressional allies, I do think that some of our folks in Congress, they want to go back to the Republican Party of 20 years ago. That Republican Party was a Republican Party that lost and that couldn't successfully govern the country. We need to lean into this new coalition, do a better job serving them, and that's how we get them to show up in these midterm elections so that we can win not just presidential races, but midterm races too.
We're going to lose the midterms. We're going to lose the midterms. Then we're going to lose in 2028, and it's because she's a piece of shit. Because instead of saying, guys, let's come together and figure out how to work together, she says the stupidest, retarded crap. And now everybody's running around divided and broken. For what reason? For literally what reason?
Because they killed Charlie Kirk in broad daylight, and we don't care about your stupid midterms.
I want to tell you what people have been saying to me. I tell them, you know, people get excited. Wow, you have the vice president on? I'm pretty impressed myself.
I'm very excited about this.
You know, I had Pence on. I've had both his vice president a couple of weeks ago. Pence was here. I'm killing it with the vice president.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
but what did you talk about with Mike Pence?
Oh,
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
I don't know. He was a lot more human than I thought than I'd ever seen him. I even asked him to come on my podcast where I get stoned, and he was like, maybe. So it was good. But here's what people, when I say you, here's what sticks in their craw. Okay. The number one issue, immigration. Not immigration, we like it that you closed the border. That needed to be done. But ICE, all that shit, too rough, too mean, too unnecessary. I think I'm not telling you what to do, okay? I'm just giving you some advice as a friend.
Okay.
And I am. And I'm not saying, I'm not asking you to apologize if I don't like when people do that. I'm just saying you go a long way toward getting people who are just completely shut the door to you and your ministry if you would just own that you guys went too far. You went too far, and you should own it like you did childless cat ladies.
Well, okay. So here's the basic problem with that bill is you cannot do any deportations without law enforcement, and you can't do a law enforcement operation like that without having some situations that don't look good when they're recorded like that. I mean, let me give you like just one obvious example. Let's just set aside the immigration element of this, okay? If you take a guy who's committed murder and you go in and arrest that guy, sometimes that person's going to resist arrest. Sometimes if you take a video of it and it's out of context and you don't appreciate why that person is being arrested in the first place, it looks pretty icky if you take that out of context video clip. And what I worry about is when people say you can't ever do immigration enforcement if it produces a bad video clip, what they're really saying is you can't ever actually do immigration enforcement. We had 12 million people come into the country, into the interior over the last 4 years, or I should say from 2021 to 2025. And we were elected with a mandate to get some of those people out of the United States of America. You can't do that easily. Law enforcement deporting people is never an easy process. So I appreciate your argument that we've gone too far, but we couldn't do nothing. And I don't think there was an easy way to do this.
Of course, there's a middle ground. See, the other thing that bothers us about stuff like that is that nothing ever lands in the middle, which is what I'm always trying to get people to do.
I thought you were crazy liberal.
Because you don't watch the show. You should watch the show.
I actually do watch the show. I laughed my ass off backstage. That was a good monologue. Even though you were making fun of me, I kind of liked it.
Yeah. It was fair. Yeah. I know someone in your administration who watches the show. Because I always hear about it. Okay.
You're right. The second lady, she's a big fan. The second lady's a big fan of Bill Maher.